Welcome to the Shellanomics podcast, your source for pure Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles entertainment, presented by King Mictus.
All right, guys, another episode of Shellanomics. We are blessed here to be with one of the most gifted artists out there. He works for Neca designing turtle artwork. We are here with Aaron Hazourri. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us on a rare recording at nighttime. So I feel like we're Donatello in Night of the Dark Turtle right now.
Glad to be here. Yeah, this is it's kind of after drawing all day. This is kind of nice to just unwind.
Yeah, exactly. So what was your first introduction to Ninja Turtles? I take it you're kind of close to my age, and late 30s, early 40s. So what was your first intro to Turtles?
Well, so I'm in my 40s. So I was actually most of us of my age were into Ghostbusters first. At least everybody I know was into the Ghostbusters cartoon, and then Turtles came out like right when that was starting to lose a little bit of steam. So that was when I got into Turtles, probably 89, 90, right before the movie came out. My dad was actually a big comic book fan and knew a guy that had bought the early Turtles comics in like 85, 86. So my dad already kind of knew about it when he saw the cartoon. And so before the movie came out, I had like the Mirage comics, those first color graphic novels, those collected editions. I had a friend that had those. So I had those books, and this was like, again, right around the time that first movie came out, so 4th grade, somewhere in there, 5th grade. And the Archie comics, too. I had, like, all the Turtle comics. I had all of them. So, right, like, early on, I was into it. But I got into it, not the cartoon and the toys as much as the comic books, because that's what my dad was into. So, he was bringing all the comics and those graphic novels. And the movie was really cool. But those comics are what really got me into it.
Oh, and especially since you're a little older than what the cartoon age was recommended for, too, as it felt a little more edgier and a little more mature, I'm sure, when you were reading into those. So when did drawing come into play with Ninja Turtles here? When did that come into play? Like, you know what, I'm going to start drawing some Turtles for the fun of it.
Well, I'd always drawn. My dad's an artist, so he really pushed me into it, not like forcing me into it, but when he saw I was into it, he would just give me, drawing paper, sketchbooks. I always had sketchbooks. I can't remember not having sketchbooks to draw in. So it was really like 4th, 5th grade, somewhere in there. I was, just drawing all the time, copying stuff out of those comics. I mentioned Ken Mitrone. We were talking before we started. Ken Mitrone was my favorite cartoony Turtles artist because I really wanted to get into animation. And so I would kind of copy some of his drawings out of the comic books. And the Mirage stuff, too, I'd copy the Peter Laird, Kevin Eastman stuff. Just as much of it as I could. I would just try to draw that stuff myself.
Oh, nice. I guess a quick question, since you were more into the comics, did you still draw the Turtles in your first early drawings with the colored headbands, or did you make them all red?
I didn't really color that much. Since the Mirage stuff was black and white, I drew a ton of stuff in black and white. And as I got into middle school and high school, I was more into black and white comics, so I would draw, even when I did the cartoony stuff, I draw it all in black and white. I didn't color a whole lot of stuff until, not until I was well out of high school. All just black and white. When I colored it, it was usually red because that's what I was into. Even when I did the cartoony stuff, I tended to use the all red Mirage colors just because it looked like cooler when you're a kid.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. And as I've gotten older in age, and I'm starting to get into the comics a little bit more, the older ones, I just finished a couple of the black and white issues. God, those are just they're timeless to read. They are timeless.
They're cool.
Especially when you hear the Turtles drinking beer. I mean, I'm like, really? The Turtles are looking for beer in their teenage years. I'm like, this is, compared to, going for pizza 24/7, this is a whole different atmosphere here, man.
It was cool. That's what I liked about it as a kid, because it was the Mirage comics were so different from the Archie comics. And that was different from the cartoon, was really silly, which I liked, but it was really silly. The comics were never as silly as the cartoon was. And I wasn't going to copy drawings from the cartoon because the cartoon wasn't really drawn that well. The comics were always drawn better than the cartoon. And they were so different. The Mirage stuff, even in the Mirage comics, book to book was different. And that led me into other black and white comics from that time that were like Turtles, but not exactly Turtles. So, yeah, the comics for me was the big thing.
And that's why I can't wait to deep dive later in this interview on Spotify and YouTube just to see, because I've been trying to get you on there for a while because I love the way you drew our old cartoon Turtles. So we're going to get there, but I really am a fan of how you drew them because, I have a couple bones to pick with the cartoon animation myself. So when you've been drawing these, did you ever I guess, did you keep any from like your childhood that you still have like in a shoebox or something? Like some of us, we had old birthday cards from grandma or, your aunt or anything you kept from your childhood?
Well, I've talked to other artists about this. I have sketchbooks going back to probably 7th or 8th grade. And I probably have some drawings that are a little older than that, even if I dig a little bit. So yeah, I have some stuff that goes back. I have some stuff that goes way back just because I always hung on to it. I don't look at it that much, but yeah, I definitely have some things from when I was a kid.
Yeah. Oh, very, very cool. So did you ever draw anything for friends for like either a birthday card or just anything out of the blue?
Sometimes, but most of my friends were just like, not that they didn't care about it, but they weren't impressed necessarily. I went to an art school for high school. So like half the kids could draw. There was music, there was dance, there was theater, there was art. So like everybody I knew could draw. So they weren't, which was kind of good. You don't want to like keep drawing the same thing just to impress people, but everybody can draw. It's not that they're like, they don't care, they're not impressed. They're just like, yeah, this is fine. We can all draw. We're all kind of similar level because we're all teenagers and we've all been drawing our whole life. So when you're surrounded by artists, you kind of, it forces you to kind of work harder to get it to another level because nobody's really that impressed. So no, I didn't draw stuff for friends that often. Family sometimes, like my grandma or something.
There you go. I know people say us when it comes to any kind of creativity, we're usually our own worst critic. I do that sometimes with podcasting. So how do you judge your work without making it like, coming down on yourself?
Well, I don't really think that it's coming down on yourself necessarily. I've never been one of those guys that like beats himself up over drawing.
Oh, that's good.
If there's either like, most of what I do is either I've drawn it right or I've drawn it wrong. And if I've drawn it wrong, either there's like something I've screwed up in the anatomy of this thing I'm drawing, or there's some kind of placement that's wrong or something. Most of that stuff you can fix just by trying it again. You just, practice over and over and over. But I think a big thing that a lot of people don't like to do, a lot of artists that are learning, they don't like to show their stuff to better artists and have them rip it to shreds. And you kind of have to do that. You have to show your stuff. I mean, now, we'll talk about it later, but you got to show your stuff to people that are better than you, that can just say, no, this is wrong. Next time try this. So I don't really beat myself up over it. If it's something doesn't come out well, you just try it again. Or you move on. You just move on to the next piece.
Just like how the pros do it in sports. Just shake it off. You throw an interception. No worries. We're going to get it better the next time. That's a great mindset to have, especially in this line, because I do that too sometimes. Like when I ask people like for my Twitch account, it's like, hey, can you give me something? And it's always hard. We're going to get to that with commission, but it's like, how do I say I don't like this without, not hurting their feelings, but I don't want that artist to be like, hey, man, I worked hard on this, just to, we'll get into that now, actually. So you obviously do commissions, I'm sure, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people will ask you to draw turtles or maybe Ghostbusters because that was your thing back in the day. So how do you go about trying to read that person's mind as to what they want? And, like, how do you, your commissions, do they let you freestyle, or are they more like, hey, I want a turtle to be a certain way?
Well, it depends. And I don't do as many commissions as I used to because I just don't have that much time anymore. But when I was doing them, I would just ask, what do you want? What are the specifics? If you don't ask, you don't know. You don't want you don't want to give somebody something they don't want. So sometimes I'll even rough something out and just send it over and say, is this what you're looking for? Some people will say, do whatever, or, do a character, do slash, whatever. And then sometimes I'll get like these long, detailed paragraphs about what somebody wants. I'll show you one that I'm doing for an old friend. This is probably 70 Disney characters. It's hard to see. But 70 Disney. Yeah, it's a lot. And this guy's an old friend, or I wouldn't be doing it. But it's one of those things where he was very detailed about what he wanted, down to like, this character's doing this character's doing that. So I try to ask as many questions as I can because I don't want there to be any confusion. I don't want anyone to be upset, And when you're doing like professional freelance work, it's the same thing. You have to ask questions if it's not clear. Otherwise, you're gonna be in trouble when you start turning stuff in and it's not what they're looking for.
Right. And so how do you keep a level head? I doubt it happens too often, but it probably does. Like you just said, I guess we can get to there in a minute. But Another question before we get into that is any sort of music or routine you have to get into, like, I don't know, do they call it like the zone, like to help get your energy up before you start? Like, do you have like a certain band you listen to or anything to get your juices flowing? Or
I don't, sometimes I'll just put on YouTube something that's not that interesting, so it's not too distracting. I'll just put on something for background noise. But sometimes music is detrimental to what you're doing because you end up focusing more on that and less on the thing in front of you. And I know a lot of artists will like, I like to play this while I'm working, but sometimes I need it either quiet or something uninteresting so I can try to work out ideas without having like any kind of noise in the background. Now, if I'm like inking something or something that's more technical and less creative driven, then maybe I'll put on some music or something. But a lot of times it's just something kind of boring so that it doesn't distract me from whatever I'm doing.
I never thought of it that way because I usually have Metallica playing when I'm cleaning my house, but I guess as an artist you might start drawing a little more stabbing in the turtle, a little more violent in there.
Exactly.
That actually makes a lot of sense. So, you've been going to art school. We're going to fast forward a little bit here in your life. So high school, you've been drawing a lot. So when did you feel confident enough? Maybe you always felt confident, most people do, but just where you could start doing this instead of a hobby for yourself to actually get paid doing this?
Well, I went to college and didn't go to college for art. I went to college for like design and multimedia. So there was not a whole lot of drawing involved. So most of that I had to teach myself, which is tough. And I had all the books and all the things that cartoonists use when they're learning. And I was in Jacksonville, Florida, which is a terrible place to try to make a living as an artist. There's just nothing there. So I ended up doing corporate stuff for 10 years, almost 12 years, something like that, a long time, and I hated it. And it was when I decided I just couldn't do that anymore that I ended up doing freelance for a little while, like a year, I think, just because I just hated that corporate job. So I don't think it was confidence so much as just I hated what I was doing so much that I just couldn't do it anymore. So I quit and started doing freelance. And I did comic book stuff, like small independent press comic stuff for a while, and logo design and mascot and stuff like that. And then I started teaching not long after that. And teaching was really fun. It's exhausting, but it was fun. And even then I was like, I want to try to get into animation. That was my whole goal, was to get into like animation as a storyboard artist or character designer, something like that. So it was like 2016, I think, when I moved to California to try to break in, and started doing like more commission type stuff. And but I'll back up a little bit. 2013, 2012, I started doing like comic book shows. So I was selling my own comics that I put together, prints, stuff like that. And that did pretty well for a while. That did pretty well for me. And then when I moved out here to LA, I started doing that stuff on the West Coast. And it's tougher here just because it's not as like densely packed as the East Coast, so there's not as much of that convention kind of stuff going on. And you're competing with people that are like pros, like they've worked on TV stuff, and you're just some guy that's out there selling stuff. So I did the commission thing out here for a little while, probably through COVID. And then it was like, I got to get a real job because this isn't working. So I was still doing commissions, still doing freelance, and just started teaching again. It was like right after COVID, so 2020, 2021, somewhere in there. So it was just tough. Like it took me a long time to get here. It wasn't like an easy direct route.
Yeah, it seems like it. Well, when you were doing your commissions, were they requesting Ninja Turtles? Were you showing it? Because again, this is before NECA. Were you still like drawing turtles, or what were your?
Yeah, well, I did turtles for fun because I'm a turtle fan. Okay. So I would do turtle fan art all the time. Okay. And most of when I was doing Comic-Cons, I had a big, thick portfolio of fan art prints, and it was probably half turtles, half just other stuff that I was into, which was funny because it shows like I had like Danger Mouse and stuff in there. Nobody would care about Danger Mouse, but they liked the turtle stuff. So it took me a while to figure out that people wanted more turtles, and at the time I was trying to get into doing like superhero. I don't know what I was doing. I was just going in every direction. So I was doing these kind of hardcore turtles with, lots of muscles and stuff. And it was fine. It just wasn't what I really wanted to do, which was cartoons. So,
right.
Yeah. If that answers your question.
Were you, you're good, Aaron. Were you doing like anything on social media? Like, did you have your own Instagram at the time trying to get more eyes on you, or how are you actually getting a name for yourself?
Well, I started an Instagram. For a while, I was doing pinup girls. I was doing pinup girl art, kind of mixed in there.
Okay.
And when I was teaching in Florida, I couldn't really do much of that. So when I stopped teaching for a while, I was doing a lot of pinup stuff. When I got back to teaching, I eased up on the pinup art because, the kids find it. And I couldn't draw pinup stuff very well, and I wanted to learn how to do it. So I just spent a couple of years doing that and some turtle stuff too. And so the commission thing, it was an even mix probably of turtles and other stuff, but the more turtle stuff I did, the more people seemed to want turtle stuff. So I just kind of leaned in that direction. And again, I like drawing turtles. So it really started to blow up during COVID when I was doing, I'd sell fan art online and do envelope drawings on the packages. And then that seemed to really take off. So I think I did more envelope drawings probably than any commissions or anything else over that period.
Oh my gosh. I wonder if, it's a little secret, but I wonder if you were the one that inspired that in this turtle group I'm in that, you really can't talk about it outside, but I've gotten packages from friends from there, and I've noticed a couple other people do the same thing. So I don't know if you started that trend. We'll save that topic for another day.
I got it. I'm sure I got it from somebody else because I wouldn't have, I'm not that creative. I got it from somebody else, I'm sure, but I did a ton of it. I mean, I did like 1,000 of those things, which is probably more than anybody else. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I did almost 1,000, I'm sure.
I just think it's so cool to do because it's just another way of showing appreciation and going the extra mile because you're creating that real estate in somebody's head too, because it's just that's going to pop out. It's like, no, you don't expect that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Well, to be honest, the fact is I like to draw. It's one of my favorite things to do is to draw. And commissions, you're still doing what somebody wants, whereas on these envelopes, I just draw whatever I want. It doesn't matter. So if I'm feeling tired, I can just do a regular turtle. If I'm feeling good and want to do something a little more detailed that I just want to do, then I can just knock something out that's fun for me to draw, and nobody can give me any critiques on it or anything because it's just what I want to do. I had some professional character designers and stuff tell me they like my envelopes better than whatever I was doing for commission because they were a lot looser. They were a lot more fun. It's hard to do that for a commission piece, but for an envelope, you're trying not to spend too long on it. It's really easy to keep it loose.
Oh, yeah, because you feel a little more handcuffed, so to speak, because you're trying to make sure you're doing what the other person's hiring you for. So let's get let's get into this NECA Spider. This is what I really am excited to start hearing about. So how did this whole origin story come to be?
Well, for NECA, I got really, really lucky. There were two people. There was Ken Metroni, one of my heroes as a kid whose stuff I used to copy out of the Archie Turtle comics. And there's Brian Van Hooker, the podcast, Turtle Tracks podcast host, who when we met, he was visiting out here to talk to some people about writing for TV or animation or something. And I don't remember how he and I met because I don't think it had anything to do with this podcast. We were just talking online because we're both Turtle fans. And I wanted to show him some of my art collection that he wanted to check out. I think it was the Cereal Box stuff. And so we met up at a bar here in Burbank. And I didn't know that he was close friends with Trevor Zammit at the time. And I also didn't know that Ken Metroni he'd already done some work for NECA. And he'd been bugging Trevor to hire me because I was, pretty good at drawing this stuff. And Ken and I had met at a place nearby because I bought a piece from him. And he said, you want to just hang out for a little bit? Yeah, so we hang out for 2 hours, talk back and forth. And that was right after COVID. So after that, he recommended me to NECA. And so Trevor was getting it from Brian and from Ken. And he saw my stuff on Instagram. Trevor kind of sneakily stalks Instagram for cool stuff. And so I think he reached out to Brian and asked Brian if I would want to work on the NECA stuff. I said, yeah, sure. That'd be really cool. I actually didn't own any of the toys at that point. But because I was teaching, and I was focusing on trying to teach, and I was in school for teaching. So I wasn't pushing for it at all. I just got really, really, really lucky and was doing freelance for them first. And then from there, I think I did that the whole time I was teaching and in school. I was also doing freelance work for NECA. So it was a lot. And then, I guess it was a year or just probably 2 years after I started doing that, Trevor offered me the full-time job because there was just a lot of turtle stuff coming. And I think some other people didn't have time to do the freelance stuff. And you needed somebody in there that could just there's a lot of behind the scenes toy stuff that goes on that it's boring stuff, but it has to get done, like concept art, or which is not as exciting as people may think it is, or just research stuff, which is also not that exciting. It sounds cool, but it's literally just watching hours of cartoons with the sound off at like double speed, trying to find this costume or that like background or whatever. So you need somebody that could do some of that stuff, where they could just say, hey, can you do this? Or, hey, we need a drawing for this Alf box, like really fast. Someone that could just do that kind of stuff that doesn't need to look incredible, but it needs to look good enough. Because I'm not like, there's some artists that are like, wow, this guy's stuff is amazing. But then there's people like me, they're just like, he's not incredible, but he can do it fast. So that's kind of how I get like a lot of my work. And so that's how I got in there. They just needed somebody that was good enough that could do this stuff pretty fast. And that can take criticism, because some artists can't. And that's a big part of it. You got to be able to, like, I did the drawing for the Usagi, the cartoon Usagi box. I did the layout drawing, and then Dan Elson painted it. And when I did the sketch, Trevor said, this looks great. And so I cleaned it up and sent it back, and he's like, what happened? This doesn't look like your sketch. You lost all the, like, looseness. It looks too, I don't remember all the notes, but anybody else would be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But you have to just be like, all right, well, I screwed this up. Let me try it again. So I think that's part of how I got hired, just being able to, like, take, and it's not just Trevor. Trevor's notes are pretty good. We get notes from just lots of companies or studios or whatever that are just, they don't mean anything bad by them, but there's still changes you have to make. And some artists can be like, I'm not changing anything. This is my art. But you can't do that. You just got to be like, all right, sure, I'll change that. It's fine. Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you work for them, and you have to do what they're telling you. So to keep that mindset, and like you say, it's not that you're defending yourself. I guess this might be kind of a tougher question, but like when you believe in something and they say it sucks, do you still, like, you don't put it out, but do you still keep that sketch, or do you just toss it in the garbage and kind of forget about it?
It's not really like that so much, because this is all like, there's some artists that are like, I believe in this, but this is not, this is all like toy packaging. And this isn't that serious. None of it is that serious. I don't think, some artists get in their head like, oh my God, I don't want to, my principles, this is just, you're working for a company that sells toys. So, like, if they say, you can't say the word hate on this box because that sounds too mean, and this is going to be in Target where kids can see it. Okay, that's fine. I'll take the word hate off. Or, these turtles' fingers need to look like this instead of this because of this reason. Okay, that's fine. I might complain about it, but it's fine. I've colored things for Ken on IDW, and we'll get notes back that are like, oh, this character should look like this. And I go, well, Ken drew it, and he drew the character originally too, but that's fine. If you guys have a certain look that you want for it, then we'll just change it. It's not, anybody that works in production knows you can't get attached to this stuff. It's only going to lead to arguments and stress and frustration. You have to there are some battles that are worth fighting, I guess, but that's more like, we want to do this thing, and somebody will say, no, you can't do this thing. Those are more like, well, we want to make this cool thing, so we're going to fight this battle. But it's not like I want to draw the Shredder doing this, and you've told me no, and I'm going to fight for my, no, it's not. None of this is that serious. It's just toys.
Oh, that's good to know. So what is the process of getting the NECA figure? Again, I know you're not in the toy development. Like, how does this work where somebody pitches an idea? Like, let's just say, for example, we got this one here that you drew, this box right here, Terminate the Turtles with the Evil Rex one. So how does the process go from start to finish? Are there deadlines where they're rushing you? Like, hey, we got to get this drawing in by Tuesday.
Well, it's like NECA, I kind of fell into the best version of this job because NECA is a really small company. I don't think people realize how small NECA is. It is not a big company. And most of them are on the East Coast. They're in I don't know, New Jersey or somewhere. So those of us that work on Turtles, like, for NECA full time, there's just 2 or 3 of us. There's me, there's Trevor, who's the guy that oversees all the Turtle stuff for NECA, and then there's Travis, and Travis is our packaging guy. He does all the packaging, like layout, design, and all that stuff. Okay. So there's the 3 of us, And then a lot of the other work is freelancers, or they're just, they're like, there's some sculptors on staff too, but they work on things other than just turtles. They might work on, I don't know, Beetlejuice or Sesame Street or something. So as far as turtles goes, it all kind of starts and ends with Trevor at NECA. So he'll usually have an idea. He might ask me sometimes, hey, should we do this? And I'll say, yeah. Or he'll say, can you find some crazy costumes for the turtles that we can use? And I'll say, oh, here's some beach costumes that I found. And he'll say, here's some that I found. We'll kind of get together on some of that. But a lot of it is just Trevor says, let's do this. And sometimes it's, is there anything cool in the Archie books we can make that we haven't made yet? Or, hey, is there like something in the Mirage books that might be cool to make that we haven't done? And that's me just flipping through or scrolling through just pages and pages and pages of comics. And if we find something cool or something we like, then I'll send it to Trevor. And this is for like the toy design, because I do a lot. I do some of the toy design, some of the concept design. I do some of the box art. I do a little bit of everything. So I'll send something that I think we should make to Trevor. He'll say, all right, do a concept sheet for me. And that's just a drawing of the thing with the accessories. And that goes to Trevor. And then it will go over to our packaging guy, Travis, who also does concept sheets. He mostly puts the stuff together after somebody else has drawn it, but sometimes he'll draw the stuff himself if he needs to. And he'll send it over to a guy at NECA and a guy at Nickelodeon that handles kind of the approval stuff. And Nickelodeon has to sign off on everything because they own the turtles. Most of the time it's really easy for them to say, yeah, this is cool. Sometimes you have to remind them where it's from because they're not all turtle experts. They have a guy over there who's really good. Jeff knows the turtles really well, probably as well as anybody. So he usually can say like, yeah, we should make this. It's from this issue of this, or it's from, this cartoon episode. So once that gets the okay, Trevor will find a sculptor, and he has different sculptors that are better for different things. Some of them are really good with the cartoon stuff. Some are really good with the Archie stuff. Some are good for the monster stuff. So he has different sculptors that he works with for different lines, just depending on, what it is that we're doing. And at the same time, he'll come to me and say, hey, we're going to need some ideas for this box. So for that Evil Rex 1, he's told me early on, we're going to do this, but it needs to be a simple image because it's going to look like those Bad Guys VHS tapes, which were really simple on a flat background. So from there, I'll come up with some ideas. Sometimes it's 4 or 5 ideas. Sometimes, for Sesame Street, I might do 20 ideas just to give him a lot to choose from. And he might say no to all of them. He might say, no, try again. And you can't take it personally. You just go, okay, I'll try again. And I'll sketch it out. I'll send it to him. And it used to be for the longest time, well, not the longest time, but it used to be I would draw the stuff out for the painted ones and Dan would do the painting. Or I would, because I also did the drawing for the original Rex one, but Dan painted over my drawing. And for the 2-packs, those boxes, the cartoony 2-packs, I would do those little flat drawings. For the Rex 1, the Evil Rex 1, Trevor said, you can try painting this if you want to. So I tried painting it, and it turned out okay. So he let me do the Pizza Club Turtles after that, which is the same process. Some ideas. Trevor tells me which ones he likes. I'll usually do a really tight drawing of that, and then we'll send that to Nickelodeon. And if they have any changes or things they want, moved around or whatever, then I'll do that, and then they'll send it back. And then from there, once they make their notes, I'll make the changes, and then I'll start the final painting. And then Trevor will usually kind of peek over my shoulder and either say, yeah, this looks good, or you got to change this. Sometimes we'll be halfway through a thing and he'll say, I have a better idea for this, and we'll just start over. It doesn't happen that often, but sometimes something will pop into his head. But yeah, that's kind of the process. We'll work together on a lot of stuff. He'll work by himself on stuff, and I won't have any idea that it's happening until I see like a little figure on the table. I'm like, where did that come from? He's been working on it for 6 months. He has so much going on. He's the guy that handles all the turtle stuff. And so that's the cartoon turtles, the Archie turtles, the movie turtles, the Last Ronin turtles, the Usagi stuff, the Mirage turtles, all that stuff. And all of the 2012 turtles. It all goes through Trevor. So he has a ton of stuff on his plate. And there's other stuff we're doing too. Sesame Street, that's all through Trevor. So it's all like starts and ends with Trevor. And that's why when you talk about deadlines, there's no deadlines until there's something that they're like, oh, we need this tomorrow. There have been a couple times where I've had to work over the weekend on something just because it snuck up on us. But usually NECA is very relaxed because there's not that many, it's not a big corporation. So Trevor will work on a sculpt until he thinks it looks good. And there's no, we got to get this done by Friday. We'll announce stuff sometimes. Trevor hates announcing too much because the stuff takes forever. And it isn't just like, wow, those guys are dragging their feet or they're lazy over there. No, it's that Trevor's working on 600 things and his eyes need to be on it before it gets approved because he's the one that can say this looks good or this needs work. It's just to go off on a tangent for a second. There are things that we'll re-release that we'll tweak and, people will kind of complain. Why are they putting this out again? They just want us to buy another one. No, it's because we're going to re-release it anyway, but Trevor sees an opportunity to fix something or something that can be improved here or, something that we didn't like on this other sculpt that we've just realized we can fix. So a lot of that kind of stuff is what goes on behind the scenes.
It's a perfect example because I just started getting into these about 2 months ago, and I can see it I really appreciate the passion and the A for effort in regards to all these figures. And I just to piggyback on what you said with the tangent there, that Shredder Brewers Club is a phenomenal Shredder figure. I mean, I know the first NECA figure, I think 2020, right? It was when they had those, you can just tell it's better, improved articulation. You get better accessories like the Shredderville doll. I mean, that's why this is my favorite because it's pretty much like I've never met you or Trevor in person, but it's pretty much my head's in your guys' brain because it's just you guys go the extra mile for all these little accessories that we didn't have, and it's very affordable. $25-$35 for some of these.
That's all, and the pricing stuff. We have absolutely nothing to do with the pricing or the sales or shipping or any of that stuff. So we're like, we don't even think about it. All we think about is what would be cool or what would be funny, and can we make it happen? And very rarely does anybody at NECA say, no, that's going to be too expensive for us to make. Occasionally they'll say, we got to wait on this. But most of the time we go, let's do this. And they say, yeah, that's fine. You guys can do that or whatever because people seem to like it. And the Shredder was one where they did a cartoon Shredder years ago that reused a body from something. I don't remember what it was from. But there was some reuse in it. And that was one of those just kind of financial decisions probably, or it may just have been how can we make a Shredder without spending too much money, but one that still looks pretty good. And, Trevor looks at these things years later and says, I would really like to do a better looking one. And it's not a thing where we're like, we're going to make people buy it twice. No, we don't care if you buy it. You don't have to buy it. We think internally, we could make a better version of this, so we should. And that's the only thought process. There's no how can we get people to pay for this again? No, we don't care. You don't have to buy it again. You don't have to buy it at all. You just look at it in the store if you want to. We don't care if you buy it twice or once or 3 times. We just think this would be cool to make. And that's how, most of our decisions, the San Diego Comic-Con stuff that we're doing this year, there's been divided opinion online about it because we see all that stuff. But the whole thought process was, what can we do that's really cool and pretty silly at the same time?
That hasn't been done before.
Yeah, and it's not going to be anything you have to take too seriously because the cartoon line is for silly stuff. It's not for serious stuff. We put out Rocksteady and Bebop in those ridiculous vacation outfits. This is supposed to be silly. It's supposed to be fun, So we thought, let's do turtles in these dumb hats with the top hats and the baseball cap. Yeah. That was the only thought process. It wasn't. There's no. And I get tired of hearing people complain about stuff like, "Oh, this is such a dumb set," or it's nobody wants this. Well, you don't have to buy it, but we made it because we thought it would be cool, and that's the only thought process behind it.
That's just, again, I say we won't deep dive too into that, but I've seen it too where somebody will buy something and complain. It's like, well, then why'd you buy it? That's like saying I bought this video game and it sucks. Well, why'd you buy it in the first place? There's no. Well, if you're not going to like it,
it's like there's a completist mindset, and it's cool if you want to collect everything. That's cool.
Yeah.
But we don't make things with the intention that you need to buy all of it, because you'd never be able to. We make some stuff. You know, when we did the Pizza Club Turtles, it was because we wanted to get those cartoon turtles back out again. And the reason we make changes to it isn't because we think, well, if we make a change, they have to buy it again. No, it's because we see a place where we can improve it or make it a little different than the last one, so that if you missed the last one, maybe you want this one. Or maybe you didn't like the belt on the other one or the faces, but you see this one, you go, okay, this one's cool. I'll buy that.
Yeah,
you know,
and that's what people say too.
Go ahead.
Especially with the in disguise. Well, because again, like I say, I don't need every NECA toy, but I appreciate the in disguise ones a little bit more because I like that color tone better. So like you say, you get an outfit, you can have the hardcore cartoon one, or you can have this one where a little more green is. I also wanted to talk about how did you guys get away with the family home video parody right here on the box. I love seeing this. This reminds me of that old VHS tape, and then obviously. The Pizza Club ones are pretty much the good old 90s Burger King Club. So I love those parodies. I love it.
That's that's how we get away with it. It's parody. It's not like we're not stealing anything. It's parody. Everybody knows what we're doing. So it's not like they're going to sue you. If we were selling videotapes that looked like that, we'd probably be in trouble. But because it's a toy, it's obviously a parody. So, we're fine. And
that's what we grew up with. Remember all the old video games in the 80s and 90s? They were all parodies. All those cartoons, everything was a parody that we grew up in. So that's the reason why I'm fond of this toy, because it reminds me of my childhood, just how that's what we grew up with, man.
Well, that's all, Trevor, again, that whole VHS thing, I am 99. Well, it may not just be Trevor, because we have a couple other guys that do packaging. But Trevor is really plugged into all this stuff. And it's not Turtles, but when we started doing Sesame Street, my first question as the packaging artist was, can we make these look like some of the old books? And so we thought, all right, let's look at the old Sesame Street books and see what we can do. So we all work together to figure out what we can do a parody of when we're, doing the next set. If it calls for it. If it's something like The Last Ronin, that doesn't really call for the parody thing. It's a little more serious. So those are more like comic book looking packages. But for the silly stuff, we try to be just, as silly as we can.
Yeah, and what I like about this is another one here you did. This is another one that just came out this year. It's the nice Leonardo, which wasn't a part of the cartoon, but I wish, I know Peter Renaday has passed, the voice of Splinter, and James Avery is gone, but the other 4 voice actors, the original core, and even Renee Jacobs, they all go to these Comic-Cons. I would so love if they could do some sort of old cartoon, bring it back to the old style, and have this evil Leonardo in it. So what made you draw these turtles like this? I don't know if you listen to Shellanomics at all, but I always talk about these have the colors, but it has the grit. Like you see a lot of this turtles that we grew up with, and it's just like this big, no disrespect to it, this happy, dopey, just like this big goofy smile, and it's like there's no effort. It's like a Terrence and Phillip from South Park. There's no, there's no life to the character, and these have life.
I think it's because a lot of the stuff with the big goofy smile. I have this bag behind me. This is based on an old Steve Levine drawing, but it's not his drawing. Somebody redid the faces, and they're not very good. Yeah, back then, I think people think that the old Turtles from back then always had those big dopey smiles on everything, and they didn't. They did a lot of times, but they didn't always. Steve Levine and Ryan Brown did that art. And sometimes they put grimaces on their face. They didn't always look like that. So when I'm drawing the boxes, I try to do a mix of what Greg Martin, who painted a lot of those VHS boxes back in the 90s. I try to do a mix of what he would do, and Steve and Ken Metroni and Jem Engel, who did a bunch of the folders from back then and some of the other stuff. I try to do a mix of what they would do. They would do I think of it as like a Looney Tunes version of a Ninja Turtle. So it wouldn't always be smiling. It would look cartoony, but it would still have some grit. It might look scared. He might have a mean face. So I try to do more of that than the cartoon didn't really do much of that. The cartoon they didn't get into that, and I like to have it a little bit more grit, a little bit more of that expressiveness. So that's what I try to do anytime I do Turtles. I try to get some of that in there. And
that's what I appreciate.
That box I was able to sneak in the cereal thing because I love that cereal, like we all do. And I have the original art. It's somewhere behind me, but I have the original art to that cereal box, so I've always loved it. And I was able to talk Trevor into letting me do an homage.
And even this one, how did you get this? Because on this back here, there's no artwork. And on this one, did they just give you permission to say, yeah, we can give you a 2-for-1 on this box?
Well, for the smaller those smaller boxes, we tend to do art on both the front and the back. And I think for some of the bigger ones, maybe there's not always art. I don't know. It all. Okay. But for the smaller boxes, let me think. The Pizza Club ones didn't have art on the back because those Burger King Kids Club tapes didn't have artwork on the back. But most of the VHS tapes did have art on the back. So most of our Turtle Ultimate boxes have artwork on the back. And they don't. It's like I'm on staff now, so I don't get paid by the drawing. So I can do like 1 drawing a day or 30. It doesn't matter. They pay me the same. So for stuff like that, it's more. I love to draw, so I would. For that box, I did I think I did like 5 pages of drawings, and each one has like 4 sketches on it. So I must have did 30 sketches, and I think that back was one of the front sketches I did, and Trevor just thought it was funny, so. He said, it looks like he's saying quit hitting yourself. And I said, you should just put that on the back. He said, I should just put that over and over on the back. And so that's what it says. It just said, quit hitting yourself over and over.
Just what Papa Bear used to tell us when we were kids. Again, I don't think parents do that more. Back in the 80s and 90s, that's what it was. You know, we had no control. That's what I would be. Quit hitting yourself. One more question on these, and then we'll get into something else. Just the other extra mile I appreciate with this is there's also included artwork in the back because they don't, like you say, if you want to spend money, you're more than welcome to, but you literally don't have to because in every box, there's also that little artwork like cardboard. So do you do that artwork as well, or how does that get made? Really? Like the sewers and the Channel 6 building and stuff? I love those things.
So there's some of those Dan Elson painted before he left. He's an animation artist. Dan Elson was doing the painted boxes before I came on. And he works in animation. He worked for Warner Brothers and I think Cartoon Network. So he's like, he got busy. He just didn't have time to do these. And I think he didn't like having to make too many changes to things because with the painted stuff, the changes are a lot more difficult because it's not just a drawing, it's a painting. So so I took over and I have done the inserts for some of the Archie Turtles. Those have the same thing. They have an insert that looks like a comic book panel, but what those really are is somebody has to recreate those. So we can't just pull from the show because the screen caps are terrible. It's not a high-res show. So for those and for the ones I do for Archie, we just have to recreate it from scratch. So that means we've got to try to paint this thing out and make it look like it came off the show, even though it didn't. So we're digitally trying to recreate something like a 40-year-old painting. For the comic book ones, I will find a cool panel. I'll take all the characters out, so it's just the background, and then I'll just go in and manually redraw the whole thing and then recolor it, and then we'll do a technique where it looks like the comic book printing dots, and then that's how we do it. So it's all just completely recreated from scratch. And we know most of that stuff goes in the trash, but as my boss told me when I first started, he's like, you'll know it's there, even if somebody else does, you'll know it's there. And so you don't want it to be half-assed. You want it to be like as good as you can make it.
No, I'm one of those who appreciates it. So we brought up our friend earlier, Brian Van Hooker, which has the greatest turtle podcast, Turtle Tracks. I've had him on the show, and I don't have this set, but I do want to talk about it real quick, and I know you know where I'm going. It is the Coming Out of Their Shells Christmas Tour, and who drew Brian Van Hooker as a nice little cameo? Did you do that little accessory?
I did, yes, because we knew... Because Brian had been bugging us to make those for a while, and we knew we could do it because there were just those tour outfits with different accessories and stuff. So so I'm proud of this. I researched. I found the skateboard, the actual skateboard they used in that We Wish You a Turtle Christmas. I found that actual skateboard online. I found pictures of it, figured out who made it, figured out what the graphic looked like, and we knew we couldn't use it because that was trademarked by whoever. Created that skateboard, graffiti design, somebody. And we thought, well, since I got to recreate it anyway, let's just put Brian's face on it instead of this. I think it was Sid Vicious or somebody was on there. Let's put Brian's face on it. And the original skateboard says Van Streets, I think. And so we changed that to Van Hook. And instead of, I think the guy's holding a guitar or something in the original drawing, I just replaced it with a hook because he's Van Hook with a piece of pizza on it. Made the most sense. And then we just... didn't tell Brian until we put it.
Oh, you did?
No, we didn't tell him it was happening. We kept that a secret. I don't even know if he noticed it right away until he looked at it. But that's the kind of stuff we do. We'll sneak little jokes like that in there. Just, nobody has to get it except us, and that's the funny thing.
Yeah, exactly.
People wonder, like, am I supposed to know who this is? Do I know? No.
Yeah, they're probably trying to Google what's Van Hook, and like, was this part of the show? Was this part of Splinter's 12 Christmas wishes? Like, they're probably trying to see if there was a Van Hook, photograph in the background somewhere that's special.
No, that's another thing. People will ask us. We will see fans all the time ask for this. Why don't you make this? Why don't you make that? And we'll just be like, it's on our list, because everything is on our list. But it'll be somebody random that we know personally, and we'll go, yeah, this would be funny. Let's see if we can make this. And then we'll make it. And, it might sell, it might not, but because we wanted to make it is good enough reason for us to make it. There's stuff that I'm pitching that probably nobody cares about, but I'm going to see if I can make it happen, Turtles and otherwise. And it may never happen, but, because of the kind of company NECA is, Trevor will say, yeah, pitch it, do a concept sheet. We'll see if we can make it happen. It may not, but I mean, they let us, we spent a day or two trying to figure out what the Count's cape looked like in the first season of Sesame Street, just so we could make it accurate. And we finally, we finally figured it out, but that's the lengths we'll go to try to make this stuff. If we're making something like that, like from Sesame Street, for example, and I know this isn't Turtles, but
that's okay.
The Muppets change from episode to episode so much because of how they made that show. So we'll research it and find Muppets from each different season and figure out what's the best version of this. Where do the eyes look the best? Where do the mouth look the best? Where do the hair look the best? What do the arms look like here? What do they look like there? It's a ton of research that goes into this stuff that I don't think people realize just how much research really goes into making some of this silly stuff.
Gosh. Well, I mean, I'm sure you've had this one. I'm just saying, I know you can't reveal anything that's under the hood, so to speak, but I do hope Tempestra comes and you're doing the artwork with some sort of arcade cabinet with Tempestra. I'm sure it's coming one day. I know you can't say anything, and it's probably on the list somewhere because, like you say, fans come up to you all the time. It's like, you got to do like that Tom Hicks GIF. Just wait. You've seen that one before. Just wait. That's pretty much what they got to do.
You know what? I'll tell you this. If there's something you think is obvious, and you're wondering, why hasn't this been made yet? You can assume that we are working on it. And there's a variety of reasons why it hasn't happened and why we don't want to talk about it yet. But if there's something where you're going, God, why haven't they done this? It's such a dumb decision. It's probably something we're working on, and there's probably a valid reason that just we don't want to talk about that it hasn't gotten done yet. And there could be a million reasons for that. It could just be, there was a time, I can talk about this. There's some box art that took a while to get done because my dad had cancer. So I was traveling to go visit him. And since I'm the one painting the box art, it needs to wait until I'm done with that for the box art to get done, which can trip up the whole process. Now, because it's NECA and not a bigger company, there's not like a manager that's going, hey, this needs to be done by this date. There's just Trevor who's like, all right, get it done when you can. You got more important stuff going on. This is, these are toys. They will get done when it gets done.
Yeah, absolutely. One other question. This is just a light bulb I had. I doubt NECA would ever do this, but you've been to Comic-Con. You see there's artwork. Would NECA ever plan on getting these where you can just buy these framed? Because I would love to have a couple next to my voice acting photograph and that kind of stuff.
Other people have said that, but I think it is meant for toy packages. So I don't know if they would really be interested in publishing them. But NECA's not really they don't really do books. They're not a publishing company. So I don't, and the rights to publishing are a little different than the rights to toy making. So I don't know. I would say never, but I would also say it's not something that anybody is really seriously talking about or thinking about. But so many people throw those boxes away. You can probably go online and just buy the box, have your own collection of NECA art.
That's true too. Let's talk a little bit about your website here. You do have a website with a couple sketches out there. I want people to check it out so they can see them all, but I did want to just touch on two of them. You have one that's almost like a Lance Ronin. Oh, so go ahead.
Before you go into it, my website my name's still on it, but it's not really my website anymore because I don't sell fan art prints anymore. I stopped.
Okay.
So once you're working in an official capacity on salary full time, it's a little different than when you're freelance. Because when you're freelance, it's kind of like anything goes. You can do the fan art thing, you can do everything. But when you're kind of working for the company, Nickelodeon has to sign off on everything I do for NECA. They have to approve everything. So it's a little strange if I'm doing stuff that they aren't approving and that I'm selling. Okay. It's a little like, that gets a little weird. So my site now I'm using just to sell stuff for Ken Mitrone, who, again, childhood like hero as far as art goes. I used to copy his stuff out of the books. And so I color his stuff a lot. Now I've colored some things for him for IDW, and I color his stuff at NECA, and have worked with him on some other stuff at NECA. So my site is really just to sell his stuff. So all the stuff on my site right now is Ken Mitrone art. Stuff he drew and stuff that I colored. And I kind of just, Ken,
gotcha.
What drawing do you have that looks cool? He'll send it to me. I'll color it. We'll do prints. And then, every now and then I'll do a print sale. And it's, goes really well because Ken's a freelancer. He's always done freelance art for comics and for animation. And so it's different for him. He's able to do that kind of stuff. And just to kind of supplement what he makes doing the comic book cons that he does and the other stuff that he does. So that's all Ken stuff. And I love doing it for him because, he's the greatest guy. But we can talk about it. I love to talk about Ken stuff.
Yeah, well, at least I guess we can just do one. I thought I did my homework, I guess, but that's all right. What should we call it there, my guy? So how about, because some of those are like Archie style. So did you have fun coloring those, like you say, or just like working on what he drew then?
Oh, yeah.
Is there one do you have a personal favorite?
Ken stuff is, when I look at it, it's like looking back at the old Archie stuff. And it's cool to be able to go back and work on it because it's almost like I'm there back then. He had two or three colors. He had Steve Levine color his stuff back then on occasion, and he had his wife, Beth. She also colored his stuff for some of the books. And then Barry Grossman also colored some of the things for Archie. So he had a few people that were coloring that stuff with him. So for me to work on it now is really cool because it's like I'm stepping into Steve Levine or Beth Mitrone or somebody's shoes. It's really neat. And to work with him on it and to kind of be like a production guy where I'll take a piece of this drawing and stick it to a piece of that drawing to make something new. I did some stickers for him recently that was just like pieced together from some of his other drawings. So it's really cool to work on that stuff because I used to read his stuff as a kid, and to be able to work on it now as an adult it's really cool. It's really fun.
Oh yeah, I'm sure, man. Just anything Turtles is pretty much, like I say, just incredible for you. Again, did you ever see you doing this? Like I say, is this one of those, like, if I were to look at myself, as a kid drawing Turtles and saying I could do this for a living, I'd be amazed. Did you ever see this coming?
Well, it's funny. I wanted to work in animation. I wanted to be like a storyboard artist, and that's what I was working towards for the past, decade or more. And I wanted to do comic books, and my wife would say I used to walk around the Target or Walmart or whatever, and I really wanted to design toys, but I wanted to design fun toys, like cool toys. I always wanted to work on Turtles, but I never thought I would because the Turtles I wanted to work on is the Turtles from then, not the Turtles now. The Turtles now are fine, and Mayhem was a fun movie, but the Turtles I wanted to work on was the stuff I read as a kid. I wanted to work on that stuff, and so to get to do this now for a company like NECA that is so small and so hands-off, and like the other stuff I get to work on there too, Sesame Street, and to get to work directly with people like Ken and Chris Allen and, Steve Levine, I've worked with him on some stuff, and, getting to meet Kevin Eastman and a few times, and, all the voice actors. This is not something I ever expected would happen. I literally just got really, really lucky and fell into the best version of it. Sometimes people ask me, what do you have to do to get, I don't know what to tell you, because I just got really lucky. And I asked a guy this years ago at a Comic-Con who worked on, I think he worked on Rise of the Turtles. And I asked him, how did you get in? And he was just like, I don't know, I just got really lucky. And I used to think, there's got to be something you're not telling me. No, you just get lucky. You meet people, you do the best work you can and put it out there, and you just get really lucky. So I never thought I'd be doing this. I got really, really lucky.
Gosh, that's what I was going to ask you. What would you say to those Shellanomics viewers who want to do something like this for a living? Pretty much like you just said it right there. Put your best foot forward always, network with people, take chances, and
also, you got to share your work. You got to put your stuff out there. There's a lot of artists that just don't – you cannot obsess over one drawing or one piece of art and just kind of noodle with this thing until you think it's perfect. Make something, put it out there, and then make something else. You can't keep just you gotta draw. There's some people that are like, oh, I need a mental health break. You gotta keep drawing. You gotta draw your way through that stuff. You can't stop. I can't go to work and be like, hey, I need a mental health break. They're like, we pay you to draw. It's the easiest, best job in the world. You gotta, if you want to draw, you have to draw. Eric Larson said a thing the other day where he's like, if you want to draw, draw. And he's right. If you want to draw, you just have to draw, and you have to show people what you're drawing. And I don't mean like go to a Comic-Con and have this tattered book of the 20 drawings you've worked on over the past 10 years. If you want to draw, you got to draw a lot and just put it out there so people can see it.
Right. So do it in volumes too. Kind of funny you mentioned that. We're not really on this manifestation. This ain't a manifestation podcast, but I just like how you said the two stores you used to go to are Walmart and Target. And where are your two Necas at? Movies are at Walmart, cartoons are at Target. How cool is that? So as we're slowly starting to bring this in for a landing, Aaron, do you have any more goals with your either NECA or just turtle drawings? Any goals you got while you're working on this profession still?
The only thing I would like to do, I would love to do more stuff for the comics, the IDW books. I would love to do, I don't know, some covers or just something like that for the comic books. I did one cover and it was cool, and I would love to do another one. And we're worth an Ethan at Second Time Around Comics and Toys. He's a really cool guy. He sponsored the cover that I did for the 40th anniversary special, and I think we're kind of working together on some other stuff. So I might be able to make that happen. But I would love to work on some more Turtles comics, and then I would just love to do more stuff. I'd love to work on Ghostbusters. Mondo's doing some really cool Ghostbusters toys, so I'm not going to get to work on those. But I would love to do Ghostbusters in some capacity. I don't know what capacity that would be, but that would be really cool. And just, I'm getting to work on Sesame Street, which is another thing I loved as a kid. I always wanted to be like a puppeteer, and I'm not, but I get to work on Sesame Street toys, which is really cool because I can draw the stuff on paper, old school. And so I can't, like, I feel greedy wishing or hoping for anything else because I've already been really, really lucky. So if this just keeps going for the next few years, then that would be really cool.
Very nice. Well, maybe one day NECA will come up with so you can be a puppeteer. They'll have a way to put your little two fingers in the count and just move them like the old puppets. Maybe look at I don't know how much it would cost for that production, but maybe that way you can get your dream out there. And two more final questions for you. This has been one of my favorite podcasts we've done here. What are you most proud of in your line of work so far?
I'm most proud of learning how to paint to the extent that I've learned how to paint. Because I'm not a good painter. I'm not a great painter. But I had never really painted digitally anything before Trevor let me try out on that Rex 1 box, that evil Rex 1 box. And again, I'm not a great painter. You wouldn't see myself be like, oh my God, this is incredible. But I'm colorblind, and Trevor knows this. I'm colorblind, so it's really tough for me to figure stuff out sometimes just by eye. And he'll have to sit next to me and say, hey, that's way too red. Or sometimes he'll take a box that I've painted and just kind of adjust things because I've screwed up the colors. So I would say the thing I'm most proud of is being able to paint things because I was not a painter when they hired me. I just really had to figure out how to do it like on the fly.
Especially with this new technology and all that good stuff. I hear you on that. You got to learn it. You got to adapt too, pretty much, for those who are wanting to make it. You got to adapt. Aaron, this has been awesome. Where can people find you in any of your artwork? I know sometimes you do appear at Comic-Cons. Where can people find you if you have any socials you'd like to plug here for us?
I think just Instagram is the best place to find me. That's the best. I don't post as much as I used to because a lot of the stuff I draw now I just can't show until it's done. But
true too.
Instagram is the best place to find me.
Okay, and what's your Instagram tag?
It's Cartoonist Aaron.
Okay. Simple enough, spelled regularly. Perfect. Aaron, This has been awesome, man. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for showing us what goes behind the scenes and making these toys. And fingers crossed, I know it's going to happen. Shut up, Mike, but we want a Tempestra. I'm sure we're going to get one day. So appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much for being here on Shellanomics.
Thank you so much. This was fun. Thank you.